You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I hope, wherever you are in the world and whatever you might be doing, you are doing very well. You're about to listen to a discussion with one of the very best postmodern guitarists around. His name is Brandon Seabrook, and I reached out to him to have a chat because I'm so impressed with his album, Brandon Seabrook's Needle Driver. Let's have a listen to what Brandon has to say. Here we go.
Hey mate, how are you?
Mate, I'm plugging away. It's 10 a.m. in the morning, mate, but nothing a bit of black coffee doesn't help and resolve.
Oh, yeah, right. It's 10 a.m. I was just thinking to myself, I was like, oh, it's 15 hours. I was like, oh yeah, that's set. That's like right now. I knew we were going to talk. I knew. Here, do you want to do the video or do you just do the regular talk?
I'd just do the regular talk. Yeah, I'd love to do video, mate. But the truth is, people don't bloody watch them. Whereas they do listen to the podcasts.
Oh, sure. Yeah, video. Who wants to watch more stuff?
Yeah, I think it's just content overload. So podcasts people put on in the background and they go about their daily lives, or when they're travelling to and from their jobs or whatever it might be.
I recently realized that a couple podcasts that I listen to are from Australia.
Cool. Who is it? Who do you listen to?
I listened to this one called The Vinyl Guide.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of it. I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't listened to it though. Yeah,
it's pretty good. Yeah, and then there's another music one that I just listened to recently from Australia. It's funny. I was like, oh, it took me a minute to realize where they're from. I never think about where a podcast is from. But
yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, look, there's a lot of podcasts out there. I mean, look, it's one of those things where there's so much content out there for people to consume that it's.
I know, Jesus.
How do you cut through? It's like with your awesome music. How the hell do you cut through and obtain just 30 seconds of somebody's time? You know,
I know. How do you do? Do you track your listenership, and how do you keep track of it? Is there a way?
Yeah, there is. So I'm pretty fortunate in that I've got a radio show as well. So I've already got a customized audience as well because they listen to the independent radio station anyway. But I've got a platform called Whooshka, which tells me on my podcast what city and obviously what country people listen to my podcast from.
Oh, nice.
And that's how I know, mate, over a third of my audience is North American.
Wow, yeah.
Which is part of the reason that I reached out to you, mate, because,
wow. We love guitar in North America loves guitar.
Yes, I know. And look, we do down here too. Yeah, I've been to New York, actually. I bought a guitar from Mandolin Brothers over in Staten Island.
Oh, nice. Oh, beautiful play. Oh, my God.
So I think when I was in there, the bloke who owns it was telling me that Vernon Reid was in there at the same time, but I didn't get a chance to catch up with him because I actually interviewed Will Calhoun from...
I saw that on your list. That's so cool. Actually, you know what? The Vinyl Guide, I listened to a podcast with Vernon Reid. They didn't end up talking about music or guitar at all. He was just talking about some social theories and stuff. But yeah, he seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah, Will Calhoun was a cool guy as well.
Is he cool? I got to listen to that one you did.
Yeah, well, look, it was what a lot of the interviews I get, they come through major labels or through big management companies and the like. So you get your 15 minutes and you get introduced to the artist.
Yeah, how does that work? You don't have much time, right?
Yeah, you get fuck all time, excuse my language, and you really just have to be on point and sort of go as soon as the interview subject's finished answering a question, you jump onto the next one because you want to make the content relevant for the listener.
Exactly, I see. Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
I much prefer these ones because it's more free form. We're able to talk about whatever we want to talk about. Right. Because sometimes you've got record company people listening in the background, and I've never had anybody interrupt me except to say that the interview needs to sort of wind up because the next person's waiting.
Oh, right, because you do when people are rolling out the press.
Yeah, spot on. That's the majority of what I do actually.
You get contacted by people. I mean, did you find out? Do you know Dave from
Dave
he sent me.
Yeah, so I'm on his list, and I was going through, and I do take the time to listen to the things that he sent through. I might, I don't know whether people do that, but I like to do it because I want to give artists the opportunity. And I heard your stuff, man, and I was blown away. So
wow, thanks.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of people doing what you do that I get access to. So when I found it, I was like, well, I'm going to reach out to him now and see if you're available for a chat.
Sure, man. You got me at a good time. I could chat for right now for like probably a couple of days straight, but we won't.
So,
You
mate,
know, I listened to the first one on, you did a really good job with it. Was it the guy from Corrosion of Conformity?
oh yeah, that was a tough one
He,
actually. Yeah,
he was wild. I was like, cause I'm always fascinated with podcast, people who do interviews and how they deal with personalities, whether they're huge egos or just like crazy people, but he was really crazy.
yeah.
You did a good job, man. That sounded hard.
No, thank you, mate. Yeah, that was. I think he's got some substance issues. That's out. That's in the public domain. That one there.
Oh, okay.
That
Okay,
was
yeah, yeah.
actually our second or third attempt at trying to get him as well.
Oh, okay.
So he's a tremendous drummer, mate. But I've seen
Oh my
photos of
God.
him.
Yeah, what a band. What a band. I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean they're originators, aren't they? I mean they should be actually a lot bigger than what they are, really.
I always thought that too.
You know, the other one that was quite tough, if you want to have a listen to it, is the one with Rex
Yeah.
from Pantera.
Oh, I didn't see that one, but
Yeah.
I could imagine.
He wasn't. Look, I've done almost 200 interviews at this point through the year, so of course the year is winding up, so there's not many more to go. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say he'd be my most challenging interview subject, mainly because I
Oh my
think he
God.
was he was quite angry when he got on the phone to me, and
Oh,
he started off by having a go at me about something. I can't remember what it was, and of course I
oh,
edited it
Jesus.
out. I mean, I've never
Oh,
met him before in my life, but he started off saying he started off. I misunderstood a joke that he made. I think, in other words, I didn't laugh at a joke that he made,
oh God.
and it got off onto the wrong foot that way, and I edited it out. Once it got going, it was fine, but
Okay, yeah.
it was one. I'm a bass player, you see, and I don't have heroes in the classical sense, if you understand what I mean.
Sure,
But
sure.
I've got people that I've listened to rather a lot of, and he's one of them. So I was really looking forward to the chat, and I felt like I was a passenger in that discussion as opposed to someone conducting the interview, which is okay.
Right.
That happens, but that was it. But no, thank you for your kind words about the one with Reed. Actually, yeah, it was a
Reed,
bit.
yeah, Reed, yeah. And I saw there was one on Richie Kotzen. A lot of people I had never heard of. And I got you in my list of my podcast thing on my phone is just exploding. But you're in there now. It's like
Sweet. Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, no worries.
I go through phases of different kinds of podcasts, and I mean, yeah, there are just, yeah.
There's just so much out there. I mean, I tend to, Joe Rogan. I listen to his podcast
Oh
because
yeah, who is that? I'll write that down. Who is that?
he's an MMA announcer. I think that's what he does, and he's also a bit of a health and fitness guru. But he's quite an intellect, so he gets some very interesting people on his podcast, like people who talk about quantum physics and that sort of thing.
Oh, who's that? What's his name?
Joe Rogan.
You know who else is kind of like that, which you might not realize at first, and I is Russell Brand, that English
Oh yeah.
comedian. He has one called Under the Skin or something, and he has the most insane guests on, like. And I really thought that he was just kind of like pretty like a shallow kind of but funny but guy, kind of a tabloid type of guy. But man, he's really smart.
Yeah,
I
he's
was
pretty
impressed.
full on. Yeah, he's pretty full on.
He's pretty full on. I mean, I was just shocked. You never know. Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, he tours here quite a bit in Australia, quite a bit. And so
And is he fun? He's really funny too. I mean, he sounds insane. I only knew him from like from Us Magazine or something. Dating people.
Katy Perry, yeah. I mean, that's where I think
Katy
most
Perry,
people
that's
know
it.
him.
That's it. Yeah.
That was a strange matchup, but yeah, a lot of people I think know him from that. He was in a few movies, or I think he was in a movie with Tom Cruise. He's done a few
Right.
things.
He's in some movies. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's done a few
Amazing.
things, but yeah, I'm just trying to think. I listened to just because most of the interviews I get are with hard rock and heavy metal bands.
Yeah, great.
In the broader sense. So I listened to Jamie Jaster from Hatebreed, his podcast. He's got an excellent interview technique actually. So I take
Okay,
a bit of
what's his name again?
Jamie Jaster.
Okay, I know that band.
Yeah, Hatebreed, good band. And
I've seen them before. I've seen them live. Yeah, they're really good.
yeah,
Great.
yeah, and Jamie's podcast, he gets a lot of the probably the biggest names in hard rock and heavy metal in 2017, almost
Okay,
2018 on
okay,
his
okay.
thing. And I listen to a lot of. I'm fascinated by the paranormal and by. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, by the way, so
Oh yeah,
no
yeah.
weird stuff. But I just like listening to people talk about their theories around. So, for example, I interviewed a bloke from the Australian Paranormal Society that was fascinating, and a lass in Melbourne who does exorcisms.
Wow.
So I try to get into a bit of that too because it's just interesting, mate. It's, a lot of people.
I love it. There's a really famous radio show here in the States called Coast to Coast AM with George Noory. He's kind of like they've been doing it forever, and it's all about conspiracy theories and paranormal activity. And they do have a podcast, but here we go. Of course, they have it set up. Their website is so archaic, but you have to buy all the episodes. So I stream them on YouTube, and they're pretty incredible. Yeah, Coast to Coast.
Coast to Coast. I've heard of it. Yeah, I've certainly heard of it. Yeah, I'll have to get onto it.
It's mostly known here. I don't know how much out in other parts of the world, but it's on really late at night, so you can catch it on the air as a radio show. And it's just on it's on from midnight to 4 a.m. and it's just they do all that, conspiracy theories, but a lot of UFOs, paranormal. But I like that too, so I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to that one.
Yeah, and I interviewed the guys.
Yeah, is that on your site?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can easily find it. Yeah, just go back to the last few weeks. There'll be that one there, and the other fascinating one that interview subject that I had on was the team that look after the Satanic Temple in New Zealand.
Oh wow!
That completely demystified what those guys do. I mean, the old thing about being devil worship is they're not that at all. They just use him as a figurehead, and then they just have follow this other ideology about the way they want to lead their life. But they were excellent to chat to. I couldn't get anybody from here actually in Australia, so I had to go to New Zealand to find somebody to chat to about it, and they were more than welcoming.
Oh, that's great, man! You must wow. So your podcast. I mean, you're pretty busy with this.
Yeah, I quit my job about 6 months ago. I had a career at a company called Telstra, which is a telecommunications company similar to Sprint. And I was an account executive there. I live in a state here called Queensland, which is like Hawaii, a cross between Hawaii and Arizona, if you like.
Damn.
Because our coastal areas are like Hawaii, but once you go about 200 kilometres inland, it's like the rest of bloody Australia. It's all desert and nothingness. So I was used to travelling up and down the coast between here and a town called Cairns, which is the Great Barrier Reef, and I did that for a long time, mate, and I just got burnt out, to be honest with you. And you get burnt out. You know what it's like when you work hard, mate. And I've got a family, 2 kids, and and I'm a musician, and I just wanted to do something with music, so I just said, bugger it, I'm going to give this a go for about 6 to 12 months, and I'm smack bang in the middle of it.
Amazing. That's amazing.
The next step for me, mate, is probably to try to get into management or promotions and see how I can bring out the Brandon Seabrooks of the world to Australia.
Oh yeah, man, we're ready to come. I mean, we're Australia. I've never been. I have some friends who have been. I have some friends from New York who went to play one show there. So they were gone for like 3 days, and it was just insane. Because often in like our world, it's like often you go for one show or 1 or 2 shows with a lot of traveling in between. But Australia is insane to go for one show.
I think, I think the way to look at Australia, I talk to a lot of, obviously, most of the people I talk to.
We don't even know. I don't even know what to think of it. I don't even know what to think. Like, what is Australia? Like, what? Like, how would you get? Like, how do you go? I mean, I know Melbourne and Sydney, but like, what?
Yeah, Melbourne and Sydney in particular is just like every other bloody city in the world. To be honest with you, I wouldn't bother with Sydney.
Okay.
Someone from Sydney might get offended if I say that, but I was born in Sydney, by the way. So, but it's Sydney's just a big city. It's 5 million people there or something like that. It's got all the usual pressures and stresses of a global city.
Right.
But once you get out of Sydney, it's Australia. You hit what I don't know how else can I say it, real Australia, where you meet real people who are just going about their daily lives. In Sydney you get it's probably no different to being in New Jersey, really, to be quite honest with you, except that the scenery is a lot different. People are working away in their bloody 9-to-5 job to pay off their Mercedes Benz and their bullshit Audis and all the rest of it.
Right.
And they've got their massive mortgages on their bullshit houses because they want to try to keep up with the Joneses. But once you get out of that, especially up here in Queensland, mate, where we're more about lifestyle.
Ooh. I like that.
We're more about having that balance, not living to work, but working to live, so to speak.
Yeah, my wife is really she's Peruvian, and she stands by that. And here in New York she's into the film industry, and yeah, a lot of our friends who try to have, we had to have that balance because a lot of our friends don't have it. It's like,
Oh, it's horrendous,
it's
mate.
tough.
Yeah, it's
You know how it is. Yeah. So in Queensland, I saw that on your Skype thing. Queensland, never heard of it. I mean, but I don't know anything about Australia, so
I think you'd have an audience here, mate. It just depends on if you could get over. That's all. I mean,
I
that's
know, right? That's the tough thing, getting there somehow.
yeah. I'm. There's been an issue here in the last week or so. One of the premier, when I say underground, the Wolves in the Throne Room and bands like that, Sleep, Chelsea Wolf, were about to come out through one of the major underground touring companies here in Australia, but the guy just got done on sexual harassment.
Oh my
So
God.
they've all pulled. They've all pulled their tours, right? So I've reached
Okay.
out to them and I said, look, I've actually got the time to try to probably help you guys get this thing back up off the ground. I mean, I'm fairly commercially minded given my background in a corporation like
Sure,
Telstra.
sure.
So I've reached out to them, mate, but I think they're just in a world of pain at the moment, so they don't know what the hell's going on. But I think eventually, mate, I've got to reach out to someone like yourself and go, look, how are we going to do this? I've certainly got the
Yeah,
contacts with the
you do.
venues. Let's just see if
Yeah.
we can come to an arrangement that's suitable for you guys, mate, given you're going to be coming all the way over here, you know?
Yeah, we could someday figure it out, play some gigs around. Yeah, I mean, but even talking about it with you from there makes it seem like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
but before, because I know there are some jazz festivals there that some of my friends have gone to play. I don't remember what they are, but
There's a lot of jazz is very big here, mate. Actually, yeah.
yeah,
Once you get into the mate, there's actually in Brisbane here, our major city
yeah,
here. There's a jazz club here, so you find in just about every major city, major regional town as well. There's a jazz club.
right,
You know that, and so you get that core audience that are going to come to a gig anyway. It just depends on who's on.
sure.
So I think that might be one way to approach it. But yeah, I'm just I can't remember the name.
You're
of
just
the
getting
company.
into it. Yeah,
Yeah, I was talking to, do you know the band Deicide? And
yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah, from Florida.
yeah, from Florida. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, legendary. Yeah, of
yeah. I
course.
talked to Ralph Santola, who's been in a ton of bands like Iced Earth and the like, and he's an excellent guitarist. And mate,
Excellent. Yeah.
the other thing that's available is to do clinics.
Yeah, sure. That's a big thing, right?
Mm.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
so I'd love to
I've
bring.
done that.
Yeah, you've done a few of them.
Master classes, I guess I call them usually. Yeah, same thing. Clinic, master class. Yeah, I've done them at colleges a lot. On tour, even in the United States, like in the Midwest, I'll do one or do sometimes a group master class, with the band or just a solo thing. Yeah, sure. Even here, it's a good way to tour
Yeah,
or to help things.
so you're in New York City, is that right?
Yeah, New York City.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I love it there. Actually, I stayed there for 2 weeks in 2012.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's insane. It's great. Yeah, but I mean, even getting a tour together in the States can be hard sometimes too. I mean, obviously easier than traveling outside of the States, but if you have master classes or clinics and all that stuff helps.
Mm. Yeah.
The drummer in my band, Allison, is actually when she tours her own bands that are a little bit more jazz than what we do.
Hmm.
But she has like I think it's a Zildjian thing sponsorship, and they promote classes for her everywhere she goes. They encourage her to do it, and they help her out.
Cool.
And so that's a big part of her touring is the clinic.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, it's definitely a way to go. I mean, I think you've just got to be versatile these days and give. I like when I talk to. We're talking to a lot of artists. I've noticed the ones that are just below the surface but are still quite successful give people a lot of opportunity to support them. So whether it be through merch or through clinics or albums or what have you, there's about 5 or 6 different ways people can actually pay money to support the artist.
Sure. Yeah.
So
And people like clinics. Clinics are fun. Like you get a chance to play and talk and stuff. It's more personal. I think.
no, agreed, mate. Agreed.
I think people enjoy that just as much as or more maybe than the shows.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I agree with you because I think that it's the show. I think people are a bit YouTubed out from rock shows or live shows. You know what I mean? So getting that one-on-one contact with somebody through a clinic or through a demonstration is a way of feeling as though you can connect with the artist.
Yeah. I remember going to clinics when I was younger, and I would even go to. I mean, I would even like if the guy from Deicide was doing a clinic, I would go to that. I would go.
Well, mate, watch your space then, because he wants to come out. I've just it's just, man, you just got to get. The big problem these days, mate, as you well know, mate, is cutting through all the noise on the internet and promoting something appropriately.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly right.
because I was talking to, who was I talking? David Vincent, who was in Morbid Angel.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, he toured with his ex-wife's band, who called Genie Torturers. They toured Australia years back, but of course nobody knew about it because it wasn't promoted properly.
so did anybody go to the shows or?
Oh, probably a handful of people, but I guess the point being is that if you don't know that a show's on because it, I mean, I know Facebook has all its target marketing and all the rest of it, my God, but you're doing it with everybody else. So, look, yeah,
Right.
I don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just sort of saying, God, I'm sort of thinking about trying to get outside of the box about how you can reach an audience that's going to be interested in going to these sorts of things. Because, I mean, I see the posts on Facebook, oh my God, I didn't realise you toured. I mean, Australia's a long way to come for an artist, right? So it's like,
Yeah, sure.
you're constantly seeing that stuff. I didn't realise you played here, or when did you play, or what have you.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And you're not going to come back sometimes ever to Australia.
Right. Australia is for a lot of people a one or two time thing in your life, I guess, or once or, or never.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But mate, we better talk about you because,
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
I read, of course, that, mate, you are a critically acclaimed New York-based guitarist and banjo player. And, well, you can be modest, mate, but you were named by Village Voices New York City's best guitarist, which is a heck of an achievement.
I'm still riding on that, even though it was like 5 years ago. But I'll keep saying that for a while. Maybe at 10 years, it's too long. But
Well, congratulations on it anyway. Belated congratulations on achieving the award
thanks.
anyway. But, the thing that drew me to you is the feature of your playing, which is your improvisation and what the layperson may term avant-garde compositions. So
Sure.
I was compelled to reach out to David when I heard the album Needle Driver, as I'm a big fan of electric jazz guitar performances, so guys like Steve Kahn.
Sure.
Your album Needle Driver, mate, it's a heck of an EP. There are so many layers, there's so much depth. The instruments...
Yeah.
Mate, they do sound as if they're going in separate directions at times, but it all feels so cohesive at the same time. So, mate, what inspired you to create the EP?
Well, the EP just came out of actually playing with Allison and Johnny. We got together for one show in New York called at the Alternative Guitar Festival like four years ago. And we threw together 3 songs really quickly, and it was a great show. And often in New York, you say, "Oh, that was so fun. Let's keep doing it," and you never do it again. Things come up, but we did get to do it again, and yeah, was just writing for those guys in mind. I know they're playing really well, and I know what they can do, and they like to do what I like to do, and we all like really dense music that takes a lot of time to practice and put together. I mean, it took us probably 3 years to put that album together and learn it really well enough to record it. We like angular, dense, sometimes humor. Sometimes there's some humor in there. Noise, physically challenging. All those things kind of go into it.
Yep.
Some of the riffs came out of improvising, and we would say, "What is that?" And we'd try to grab things from tapes and stuff. So it started really pretty organic. And that's kind of a corny, I guess, word to use, but it just came. It was just we just fit together the right way. I don't know if I would have done it with anybody. I had asked other players in New York to do that particular gig, people that were much busier, and it was a one-time thing, and they wanted me to get some big names, and I tried to reach out to people, but I'm really glad that didn't work, because I don't think this band would exist if we didn't do that first show. That was, I don't know, maybe that was too long of an answer.
No, that's a wonderful answer. You said something in there that it took you a couple of years to get together or to compose, if you like, and mate, what I can hear, mate, I can hear hundreds of hours of compositional rehearsal across the cuts.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It actually brought to mind, now I'm a musician, as I shared earlier, so
Sure.
Keith Richards said something a long time ago, and I totally believe in this, and he said, you don't get to be loose until you're very tight, and I can hear that.
And I tell you, It's true. We just played a few shows for the album release, and I think we're just figuring out how to play this stuff now. I mean, we recorded the album like a year and a half or 2 years ago, and it's never ending, the tightness that enables us to be loose. I mean, we've been doing new things with the material, and also we've only had these 5 songs that we've been playing for a long time. We're starting to work on some new ones, but in that limit of the material, we don't have that much material, but we've just stretched it and learned it and got so tight on it, and are now, it's true. I totally believe it, and it's really,
yeah. So
Steve is amazing. I mean,
so was it a case of you guys just getting into a rehearsal room somewhere and you gave them a rough sketch of what the song sounded like, and you just went for it? And is that
right? I would make some demos and send it to them, and then Johnny DeBlaze and I, the bass player, would get together and sort of work out the riffs in the sections, and then we'd bring it into Allison, because Allison is a very busy, as you may know, very, very in demand, busy musician. Well, so is John. I mean, we needed to make sure we utilized our hundreds of hours in the right way, because so we would just get together, the two of us, work out the riffs, bring it into Allison, and we work it out together, and we'd come up with new sections together. But I'd say I wrote like 90% of it, and then those guys would have arrangement ideas, and we put it together as a band. I mean, we just a lot of hours. Sorry, I'm getting off track there, I guess, but
no, that's a good answer, mate. No wrong answers, mate. You just
no wrong notes, no wrong notes, no wrong answers.
So, look, Needle Driver was recorded, mixed and mastered by legendary engineer Martin Beasy, who people will be probably most familiar with his work with Sonic Youth, I think, but I knew him through Swans, actually. So it's a very clear production, and I'm so glad that you sought the collaboration with someone who knew what they were doing with the EP cuts, as it would have been cruel in lesser hands, mate. So tell us about working with Martin.
Well, I know Martin lives in the same, he's right in my neighborhood, like 4 blocks away. And I had worked at his studio on other people's albums over the years, as a sideman or a collaborator, and an amazing engineer. And he doesn't have amazing gear. I mean, he has Pro Tools from like 8 years ago or something, but he does have an amazing board, but his room is incredible. If you ever come to town, I'll take you over there. And his studio is this cavernous basement in the old can factory in Brooklyn, and he just uses his rooms in microphones. He really knows his rooms really well, and he's brilliant with this kind of music. He just knows how to capture it, and he has we just listen to the playbacks really loud, and it's just, I don't know. Yeah, he was just the right person to do it. I knew that. I do my other records with other people. I've done a lot of records other places too. But just something about, I knew that it wouldn't be too clean, but he would get the ideas across the way I was hearing them. A little bit raw, but still you can hear the cohesive and tight aspects of it. But yeah, it's just a blast. I recommend it to anybody, and I just like his philosophy on recording. It's just it was fun. I mean, he's worked with so many bands, and he's really easy to work with, and he's just a really nice, fun guy. And that's such a corny answer. Really nice, fun guy.
But it's such an important point, because if you don't feel comfortable with the person who's recording you, mate, it can make for a very difficult experience.
Oh God, yeah. With him, he was never going to say, worry about how distorted that amp is, or maybe there's too much reverb on that, or are you sure you want this part? Are you sure you want to do another take? Are you sure you want to double this guitar? You never have to worry about that. He was there to just aid the process, and he had ideas in the mix, like, you might want to do this, but there was never he just, as a great engineer, just kind of lets it roll. If you asked him something, he would give you his idea on it. Like, you ask him, like, did that sound good? And he'd say, yeah, that was good, or try it again. But he would never get involved with that unless you asked, which to me is a sign of a great engineer, because I've been in a lot of recordings where the engineers start to become the producer, and and my music's a little extreme, and I like to sometimes, although this album has less overdubs than other albums that I've done, I still, I wanted to really make some parts dense I want to make this sound really bright and this, and he would say, great. Or one time he said, well, that's already really bright. Are you sure? And then at that point, I always kind of listen to the engineer. That's the point I think you should listen to them.
That's a crucial point you make, because if an engineer keeps on trying to act as a producer, you're eventually going to tune out to what they're saying. But if they only say things occasionally, you think, hang on a sec, there's going to be some gold in that. I need to listen.
I know. He's like, well, that guitar is already really bright. I said to him, or, I think you don't want to turn the bass up there. It's already pretty loud, or, I always stop when engineers say that. Or in the mastering, he said, I don't really master, but I can help. And we would talk about mastering, and I'd ask for things. And so, I always listen to the engineer at that point. When anything to do with, post-production or anything, I tend to make sure I listen, even though maybe we won't go through with it. I always,
Yeah, no, cool. Hey, different question for you.
To anybody, Anyway.
Okay.
This is a plug for the C Studio.
No, sweet. Well, anybody listening, look him up, because he's the man. And
yes,
look, as I say, mate, the kind of songs that you've produced on the EP, the album or the EP cuts, in lesser hands, mate, you wouldn't be able to hear so much of the detail, and it's so multi-layered what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's more going on in 15 seconds of your music there is in most albums, half-an-hour albums or EPs out there, mate. So it needed somebody with a deft hand to be able to bring a lot of that sparkle to life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, it could have gotten lost in the cacophony, or being able to take that music in as an engineer is really, like, being able to listen to that and not get overwhelmed or lose control. I mean, you can't really play anything for him that's gonna throw him off in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
There was no way he was gonna be overwhelmed by the changes, and it's it's all over the place.
Yeah, that's important.
20 seconds later, it's at a different dynamic, and 10 seconds after that, you really need to hear the hi-hat, and then you need to
you got what you guys were trying to achieve.
We did, and it's true. The engineer is crucial. There's not that many engineers. Actually, there's so many engineers in New York, but there are only a couple that I would actually bring my own stuff to.
Yeah, no, that's an important point there. And hey, I read an interview with you in 2014 on Vice Noisy's website.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Well, look, I look, with all due respect to the interviewer, I thought they were fairly pedestrian questions, and one of the questions was fairly banal. It was a question that you were asked about the difference between banjo and six-string guitar.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought your response was classic, actually. You said there are 323 ways to play D flat major 7 flat 5 on the guitar, and 4 ways to play it on the banjo. Yeah. They both get you into a constellation of relationship problems. Music is complicated.
Oh God, that was that. That was kind of funny. Maybe I was. I was reading a lot of poetry at that time or something. I was like, that was.
I love that answer, mate.
I meant relationship problems with other musicians. I didn't mean. I meant, with other with the press, musicians, like that kind of thing. But yeah.
Oh, well, I really like that. That one line there, music is complicated, because, mate, it bloody well is. Like, I play in cover bands, mate, and geez, I mean, we were trying to learn, and this is very different from the stuff you're doing, but the band that I'm in, I felt I'm fairly competent in my part, so I had it down, and I get so familiar with the other instrumentation, even though I only play bass and guitar, especially with the drums. Because I'm primarily a bass guitarist, I really focus on what the drums are doing, because I can't do what I do unless the drummer knows what they're doing. Now, mate, talk about complicated. We were trying to learn Scher's If I Could Turn Back Time for a New Year's Eve gig we've got in Bundaberg. And
is that Cher? Yeah, Cher.
Yeah, that's a complicated tune, man. And it sounds pretty straightforward, but you can tell it's one of those songs that was written in his studio. You can always tell by how complicated the drumming is in terms of the changes and the way that they approach some of the changes.
Yeah, the drumming on that song is pretty great, right?
I don't know who it is, but it's good stuff. But I can tell you, mate, we had to drop it because the drummer just couldn't get it. And I knew he wouldn't get it because he's just not the sort of drummer that sits down and really listens to a song before he brings it into a rehearsal room so that they can play it together in preparation for an evening's performance. Now, I was going through that at the time when I read that quote from you. So when you said music is complicated and the way you framed it at the end of that wonderful quote there about there being 323 different ways to play a D-flat major 7 flat 5 chord on the guitar, I thought, this is a guy who knows what's going on.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it's just like you just can't get hung up on certain things. At least I try not to. I practice so many technical things all the time, and I want to try to put in all those 250 ways to play a D major 7 sharp 11, but you kind of gotta get over that. And I think that's what was complicated for me, at least for a while. But then because maybe you can hear that on older albums I did, but now I've found a way to sort of be more direct with it. And plus, just focusing on guitar more helps, because I was playing guitar and banjo a lot at that point. So I haven't been playing as much banjo. So it makes it a little less complicated. But yeah, having relationships with other musicians, it can get – you kind of also have to let things go a bit, which I've been doing, and rehearse.
You do. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying there.
If it's not exactly what you want, sometimes you have to move on. And in the past, maybe I wasn't as much like that, so it was getting complicated. But you kind of have to let it go, because I don't know, you just have to.
But you're clearly an academic. You're an intellect. You studied at the New England Conservatory in Boston. Okay, so you're used to working with people who understand it at an intellectual and probably at an emotional level as well.
Sure.
So I take it, mate, that working with you, mate, you're looking for a very specific type of musician.
Yes. Yeah, I am. I'm looking for one that can also obviously, technical facility, but also like be into just ridiculous, some humor aspects, and to be able to put a lot of work into it. This isn't the kind of gig. My own records aren't kinds of things that you just kind of write out charts and rehearse a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Yeah, I mean, it would be. I should ask, how long did you study at the conservatorium for?
At the conservatory, I was there for 4 years. Yeah, and at that point, I was playing a lot of jazz, a lot of straight ahead jazz, and I was just starting to kind of get into open improvisation and contemporary classical music and stuff. And so, but I hadn't really separated everything was kind of still separate. Like jazz was over here and rock was over here and prog is here and experiment. It hadn't all kind of come together yet. So, I wasn't doing music like I'm doing now, even though I was hearing it in my head, and I was trying to figure out a way to put all of these things together in a blender, but I wasn't really there yet. So it's only in the last 10 years that after school that I have been able to really put all these things together. Because sometimes I was in an interview the other day in last month, and the guy said, well, sometimes do you play so fast and so crazy, do you just kind of like go off the rails like a car, a race car, speeding off the track and crashing into bursting into flames? And I said no. I said no. It's everything I do has a lot of intent behind it, and execute. I'm trying to execute it the best I can, and it's not, I'm not losing control.
Yeah. Yeah, no, agreed.
I'm not trying to do this stuff to, it's not me losing control and then putting it into a song. It's very
deliberate what you're doing. I can hear how deliberate it is.
There's a lot of thought, the thought behind it, and we're trying to execute this thing. And he said, well, sometimes do you just play, sit down and play like through jazz standards on guitar to clear it up? And I said, well, I mean, that's in there too. If you listened, I mean, it's all in there. And no, I don't have to sit down. I don't know. It's just funny how some people.
Yeah, I think
some people hear it. You never know.
I think if you're not a musician, it could be a struggle to connect with the wonderful music you're creating.
Sure.
There might be that, and a lot of journalists think that they're musicians. To be honest with you.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. What can I say, mate? Sorry. Yeah, it's.
I know. It's funny. Yeah. God.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about some of the people that I've interviewed in the past, and I mentioned Ralph
Yeah.
Santola and Deicide. So who did you grow up listening to? Who were you inspired by?
Well, first of all, it was Hendrix. Like the classic rock stuff. I mean, Hendrix and Van Halen were huge influences. Van Halen still is, but those were sort of like they were untouchable to me. I would hear that and I would say, how do I play that? I can't even come close to that. I would try and but it wasn't sort of until punk rock came around that I started to I could sort of play that music a little easier than Van Halen and Hendrix. Even though, I mean, with my friends too, we could sort of all kind of get together and play that stuff. So then I got into sort of the American punk rockers, Southern California, like the Minutemen were a huge influence. Those bands, Husker Du,
Great bands, yeah.
great bands. And then, of course, jazz was always there too. Jim Hall was a huge influence. Wes Montgomery. Let's see who else. People like that. So all of those things were coming together. I was listening to them separately. They hadn't all sort of joined in together yet. I'd have the Hendrix and Van Halen, the classic rock, and I'd have punk rock, and then started listening to some classical music. Started to get into Frank Zappa, which led me to Ligeti and what's his name, Varese and Varese and all that stuff, and listening to Hendrix led me to the blues. So it was all these kind of boys, all these kinds of things, were coming in. Yeah, that's the one thing about something like Zappa getting into that was really a portal into all these other kinds of music.
Yeah. Did you get into the Steve
Even
Vai
Zappa,
stuff?
all these things, you'd read the record covers and you'd say Muddy Waters or Burt Yanch or all Sandy Denny, and all these things would lead you to so many other things. So, and I was always curious. So by the time I was in high school, by the end of high school, I was listening to all kinds of stuff. But guitar-wise, Van Halen, I still listen to that a lot. And there's so many players in New York that I like. That's just
Yeah, New York's the hotbed for guitar playing, isn't it,
there's a
really?
lot of guitarists here.
Yeah. Well, when I was there,
Yeah.
it was a bass guitarist I met, but I met Billy Idol's bass guitarist working in Guitar Center. Now, to a bloke from Australia,
Wow.
that's a spin out,
Amazing.
I just walked into Guitar Center with every intent. I bought an acoustic guitar down there, actually, and
Nice.
acoustic bass guitar, I should say. They had a Martin one, and the lass who sold it to me actually told me that the last two or three acoustic bass guitars she'd sold, because of course they sell bugger all of them, were all Australians.
Yeah.
so
Wow.
she was used to selling acoustic bass guitars to Australians. But in between that, the guy who was looking after the electric bass guitar stuff and the electric guitars was Billy Idol's bass player. So had a good chat to him about all sorts of things, actually. And it's New York's just a phenomenal city anyway. But from a musical perspective, the birthplace of jazz, where ragtime became jazz.
Sure.
You just got there's just a vibe about the places there that makes you want to create. I totally understand why people want to move there and become a guitarist, but then that poses the problem because there's too many bloody guitarists there, isn't there?
There's too many bloody guitarists. I mean, I know it. It's also everybody is pushing each other and it's just I wouldn't even know what to tell someone who wanted to move to New York. I mean, you just kind of find your own voice. That's kind of corny advice, but
well, no, it's good advice, mate. It's very good advice because you do have to stand within your own truth and you do have to find your own voice. There's no point in trying to be anybody else. Like I've for years, I never had trouble reconciling it, but I love disco music. But at the same time, I love death metal, black metal, and a lot of very heavy metal types, but they never intersect. But I get a lot out of both, that, and because I'm a bass guitarist, I love playing disco music. I love doing the octaves, and I love a lot of funk, and I love jazz, of course. But yeah, I tend to find that I listen to metal, but I try to play funk, jazz, and disco.
Yeah, I mean, I would listen to Deicide, but I could never play. I mean, I would never play that, but I think in that kind of density or that atonality or that intensity, I take from that. But it's funny. I'm just reading a book on the New York music scene from 1970 to 75 called "Love Goes to Buildings on Fire." It's a really great book, and
Great
they take I guess it's a Talking Heads song. It's weird, but they take the salsa, disco, punk rock, and loft jazz, and all that was going on at the same time, and he goes back between all of them. But the disco stuff is really interesting. The disco DJs, and yeah. So I've been checking out some of the disco stuff that have you heard Christina? You ever heard of her? She was like a
No, tell me.
She was like a no wave disco woman from late 70s, early 80s. You can find her records, but it's really cool. No.
And it's Christina spelled.
It's just Christina,
like normally like Christina Aguilera or whatever it might be. Yeah.
No, it's just Christina. And I have some of her albums somewhere. I mean, I don't know much about her. Some of my friends here would know more about her, but she's amazing. Let's see.
Yeah, I really one of my icons, if you like, is Bernard Edwards, who of course is the bass player in Chic. His bass playing, married to Noel Rodgers' guitar playing, is still something that still gives me goosebumps to this day. You know that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I mean, yeah. Christina, the woman was on the label. I think she was on Z Records, which put out put out Lydia Lunch and.
Oh yeah, I've heard of her. Yeah.
And a lot of other stuff. But anyway, she's something good. She's like no wave disco. It's pretty amazing.
Okay. Mate, let's talk about some of your other projects, actually, because you are a prolific artist. So a bit of a roll call, certainly not limited to this, but this is what I could find online anyway, and I hope I don't mispronounce the first group you're associated with, but that's Ditremel Fatale. Yeah,
Ditremel Fatale. That's another record I put out this year of a large group. It's a little bit different than Needle Driver, but yeah, that group's work in progress. We're still figuring it out, but we managed to get an album out this year.
Mm-hmm. And then there's probably the best band name I've heard in ages, Sylphid Vitalizers.
Oh, that's just the solo album. Yeah.
Is that a solo? That's the title of an album,
isn't it? It's a solo album. I'm on there on banjo and guitar and drum machine. There are many overdubs. I think at least 10 per song, layered guitars and banjos. But that's just a solo album. That's just me solo. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And the other one is Seabrook Power Plant. That's another great name.
Seabrook Power Plant. Yeah. That's a band that I have with my brother on drums and Tom Blankard on bass, and we've been together. We actually played our first gig about 10 years ago, but we don't play as much anymore because everybody lives in different cities. But yeah, we managed to get a couple of albums out, but we never really got an album. We sort of another band. It took us a long time to get it together, and we finally got it together, but we weren't able to record. We tried to record a couple of live things, but I think I'd like to record a live album with that band.
Oh yeah, okay. And these three projects, can somebody, particularly because I'm here in Australia, mate, so international listeners, how easily accessible are they if they want to listen to this stuff? Can they go to Apple Music or Spotify and check some of it out?
Yeah, it's all on those. It's on Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, Google Play. Mm-hmm. It's also on my Bandcamp page. All of those.
Okay. Yep. Oh, so it's all aggregated on your Bandcamp page.
Yeah, all Bandcamp. All these releases are on there. So they can check them out there.
You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay Smith, and that was my discussion with Brandon Seabrook. Thank you so much for listening.